Hey everyone, James from TDB here, bringing you another Inbetweenisode. Today, I am going to be talking about two heavy-hitting Yiwu teas from the mid-2000s. These are both chunky, about $600 each. One of them is BYH Yiwu from 2005. The other one is the Dingji Yesheng from 2004 from Yongqing. So Yongqing is, a relatively well-known Taiwanese boutique. BYH is a little bit less known, but I wouldn't say they're lesser in any respect. In fact, they remain one of my favorites. I don't want to get too far into kind of my prior assumptions about both these teas. Before we get into it, I'll talk a little bit more about that as I brew them. But we are basically comparing two higher-end Yiwus from kind of these boutique brands that are still, it's like per gram basis for a session, using about 4.5 grams each here. It's not too crazy. It's like $5 each, so we are talking about $10 here. But still, they are, compared to most of the other teas, they are expensive. 500-gram chunky cakes. YQH was really kind of like my first boutique that I really got to dive into and explore beyond kind of like younger Western teas. And BYH has probably become my favorite amongst like the Taiwanese ones, at least. Certainly their run in 2004, 2005 is really, really good. So yeah, I think for me at least, the point of this is not necessarily to put one of these teas down, although I do think probably one will rise above the other. It's to just kind of compare and contrast the differences. So yeah, let's get into this. I will talk a little bit about my impressions of both of these as we go. Okay, so I have just boiled this water. I've given these both a rinse. I think this is BYH. And I think this is the Dingji Yesheng. They both have, a lot of these Taiwanese boutiques have a very particular kind of like perfumey aroma that is both kind of unique, but also like unique to them. So like BYH smells a certain way, Yongqing does. And so this is a cake from BYH I got about a year ago. And so yeah, while technically blind, I think we've already kind of revealed. I suspect that this first steeps is going to be kind of a opening up steep, probably not too much there. The Yongqing Dingji, I think I split this cake post-pandemic, I think. I want to say 2022, somewhere around that range is kind of where I think I grabbed a half of it. You're never grabbing exactly the same part of each cake, so we're not perfect here, but we'll do what we can. Yeah, so my what I basically think of both of these teas before coming into this tasting is that the 2005 BYH is a really kind of classic Yiwu. It has a lot of those woody notes, has a bit of that plum. It has the BYH perfume to it too. I really like it. It's amongst my favorites teas or cakes that I just own, period. I like it quite a bit. The Dingji Yesheng is also, in my opinion, a good tea. While YQH was kind of like the first boutique I explored, as I got more experience, I think for me at least, YQH got knocked down a little bit. I still like them quite a bit. A lot of their appeal was certainly in the price that you could get the teas for at a certain point, especially if you were buying in bulk. But I do like their teas, and I do drink them regularly. We'll start with this one on the right. This first steep, I wouldn't take too seriously. It's the first one. They both look a little light, so we're just kind of opening up. Cheers. Decent thickness, but I think it'll kind of get denser as we get further in. Like a very light oiliness that I think will enhance. And you kind of have the basic structure and profile that you're going to get later in the session. Some wood, some plum. Kind of lingers out in the back of the mouth. It's a bit brighter, in my opinion, than the 2004. The Dingji Yesheng, on the other hand, is a weird tea. While the BYH, I'd say, is closer to what I imagine, kind of like your stereotypical Yiwu, the Dingji Yesheng is a blend. I don't know exactly where Yang says it's a blend from. I don't take the area claim super, super seriously, but I think it's from some fairly deep areas within kind of like the greater Yiwu area. And in my opinion, it's kind of and I don't mean this too much as a knock, but it's a fundamentally sort of imbalanced tea where it does certain things, but it has a lot of deficiencies in other ways. Maybe that's not the right way to put it, but it has certain characteristics that it's very, very strong at. Like, it has this very, very strong oily body to it. It has a depth to it that's very good and very uncommon, but it also kind of lacks the kind of dense core that you're going to get from something like a BYH. That's basically how I see it right now. I haven't even taken a sip of this, but let's see how this tasting kind of lines up with my prior experience with both of these. Sappy resin. The thickness is at least the same as the BYH, if not more. I can feel a little bit more of the depth. I think I did steep this maybe a touch longer as well. It's actually holding up not bad. It's not incredibly dense, but it has this kind of like, it's like the boutique form of Showdown. It's like this deep force, sappy, resinous quality to it. It hints at that kind of like young menthol camphor toothpaste. More in the smell. And judging from the way these look, I am using stuff that is fairly compressed. I think getting close to the core, just because I'm kind of finishing off that chunk. Okay, let's do 2. I think this is one where, well, I guess the question on these tastings is honestly when I'm doing these side by side, I can only drink so much more caffeine throughout the day. So if I'm being honest, I don't always drink these teas to completion. And for instance, when I did the BYH compared to a cheaper Yiwu, I ended up drinking the BYH, but not the cheaper Yiwu. So the question is, will both of these make the cut as far as bringing to the rest of the day? YQH really, this is the part of the challenge of doing them side by side too, is diagnosing what is doing what to your mouth in terms of aftertaste. There is some very nice coating there. The deeper heaviness that I feel is probably from the YQH. So I'm gonna extend these steeps just a little bit, maybe 10 seconds. Got the poo burps already. Okay. So A is the YQH, B is the BYH on the bottom of these tins. Maybe I'll just reveal that now, just to confirm, although I am extremely confident. Yeah. Doing these blinds, I wasn't sure. Maybe I'm going to really embarrass myself, but in the end, a lot of them are so obvious that it's not. It's like no real risk at public humiliation. And we will let that go there. So we're going snakes now. So this should be A. And yes, sure enough, it is A. And B is the BYH. So we are basically uncovered which is which. Fairly clear. Perhaps the more appropriate way to blind would be like 2004 BYH versus 2005. That aroma is very appealing from the BYH. Very much kind of the notes that you taste too. More of a foresty. The aroma is more intense for the BYH overall. I do hear that Mr. Chen of BYH stores his tea semi-sealed or somewhat sealed. So could have something to do with how these teas turn out. Yangqing Hao, like a lot of these Taiwanese boutiques, is based down in Tainan, which is the southwest part of Taiwan. BYH is based in Taichung, which is right in the middle of Taiwan. Interesting facts. As far as I know, BYH is the only Taiwanese boutique I know that's actually based in Taichung. Cheers. It's thick, still resinous. Maybe some dark leather. It's not that oily, amazingly. And it'll be interesting when I kind of dig into another cake of the Dingji at some point and see. It does have this very heavy feeling to it, and there is kind of this heavy stickiness that exists kind of in the back of the palate. It does taste like, I mean, if you know this is Yiwu, you're like, okay, I can definitely see it, but it's definitely like a weird Yiwu. It's not standard Yiwu. Like if you wanted to learn the Yiwu terroir, I would not pick this tea. In fact, I think most people would say that this is quite a bit stronger. There's a heaviness that you just feel. Definitely a tea that I'm not necessarily the most body-focused drinker, but definitely one that you feel it kind of sinking in. The nice thing about getting to know teas like this, too, is like if you just treat this like any other tea, like, 2008 A5, A2, or whatever, and you just brew it and you're not sure what to expect, and then all of a sudden you get hit this way, you might not love that. But once you know the tea, you're like, okay, well, I'm in the mood for something like that. And so you can sort of pick your spots better. So the more you get to know the tea, you can pick the correct context, when to have a tea, when not to have a tea. So I do find that benefits a kind of a weird tea like the Dingji Yesheng, which I do enjoy, but is, I don't know. It's just so heavy, man. It just doesn't always feel like if you want to get stuff done and get like a nice caffeine boost, like which is usually what I want from tea. I don't know if the Dingji is the right tea for that. So anyways, let's go over to this BYH now. A lot more flavors, almost overripe plums, just a bit of tartness in that. A really rich palate, but it's also, I think actually the Dingji is a little thicker, but this is still thick and substantive. What was interesting when I compared the BYH versus the cheaper Yiwu is it just blew it out of the water. The cheap Yiwu tasted bad in comparison. It tasted so generic. There was really no point in drinking it side by side other than to kind of prove the point. In this case, the Dingji has yet to be blown out of the water. I think this is a little overbrewed. Has good thickness. I like the way it kind of sits in the mouth. Aftertaste starting to get harder and harder to judge, but collectively it does feel very nice. They both have that kind of Yiwu complex aftertaste, back of the mouth, top of the throat. So I am feeling very good. Starting to feel very heated. And I want to do 4. So let's keep going. I'm going to do, I think, a similar level of steep on this next guy. So one thing I do really want to compare is just like the density of both of these teas. Seeing how we feel about them. I'm curious if Denny will ever bring on the Dingji. He actually has one. So I wonder if that's a tea that will eventually make its way onto a Denny-sode. Amazingly, he hasn't even cracked into it. I don't know if I went long enough on that one, but we'll find out. Yeah, I'm starting to think that side by side it was probably the wrong way to go about this. I kind of think these might have benefited a bit more from doing one and then the other, just because it's easier to sort out the aftertaste, which I do think is a significant appeal for most Yiwu teas, but certainly these higher end ones as well. But we'll see. It's still interesting nonetheless. I wonder if this YQH, the YQH is not that high in the YQH aroma at this point. I wonder if that would be easy to pick out. The aroma on this, just so classic. Very BYH. I feel like BYH does have a very specific house aroma, just as YQH does in a way. Certainly these 2004 through 2006 Yiwus and Montuans all smell very similar to one another. Cheers. Very thick, maybe just a touch oily. It's not as oily as you would think. necessarily, but there is a good thickness to it. That plum is still there. There's a lot of wood. Yeah, I like it. The one thing that is not as heavy in some of these BN houses, there's not a lot of jiangxiang, the camphor. I don't get that as much. Some of these YQH have started to develop it, although I don't know that I'm getting too much of that in the Dingji Yesheng. So that's interesting. That's definitely one. I don't know if it's could correctly be called a quality marker, but definitely something to watch out as teas sort of enter this age range. I actually feel like I detect that pretty heavily in the 2012 DJYS, so that's a tea that's a fair bit younger than both of these teas as well. Ooh, yeah, I mean, these are both strong. Yeah, and the BN Hao, I think it's a bit more of a kind of uplifting feeling to it. Again, it's pretty hard to discern in this side-by-side context. But, yeah, I am feeling certainly warmed up and a bit invigorated. So now we're going to have the Dingji bring us kind of back down to earth, I think. Cheers. Yeah, I don't know if I'm doing like the equivalent of mixing my uppers and downers in like a bad way. I might be, I'm not sure. I mean, tea in general is weaker than actual pharmaceuticals, but I do feel like these teas are kind of contrasting in that sense. You know, flavor-wise, it's interesting. I do feel like the BN Hao easily beats the YQH in terms of just as upfront flavors. This is pretty simple in the end. It used to have like this really dark, heavy, oily, bassy notes that are not quite as present. Instead, I detect more kind of conventional pu'er notes, some wood, a lot of resin. It's not as dense as the BYH, so I do think BYH is starting to show some distance. If you guessed me before the session which one I would pick, I would definitely guess the BYH. Not that I think the YQH is bad or anything, just that I've always, as time has gone by, I've certainly started to prefer that style of Yiwu. Just because, not because the Dingji is bad or anything, just because I feel there's less flaws in something like this. The YQH is just such a weird tea. We'll do one more. It has some qualities, but it's not everything. I could definitely understand why people will sometimes get disappointed. I mean, I think people could be disappointed with both of these teas. They're expensive teas, so people are going to hold them to a higher standard. Yeah. So go for a little longer. Yeah, and just more heaviness, especially in the diaphragm. Not a very typical feeling for teas. Aroma's kind of whatever, really un-Yang-like in that sense. It's interesting that Yangqing Hao has acquired such a reputation for having such a strong house aroma, but I'm getting way more of it in the BYH. And perhaps it's just because Yangqing Hao has been consumed by, I don't know, I would guess probably twice as many people as BYH. I don't know. Yeah. And I think this is a good example of like, this is something I can drink situationally. And it is a fun brew because it has such uncommon qualities. This tea also has uncommon qualities, but it's just an all-around good tea. And so for me, at least, the BN Hao is definitely what I would pick. I do think I will drink both of these teas. I think what is also notable is the YQH is not getting blown out of the water. I can still taste it just fine. So, you know, it's done better than 16 cent per gram Yiwu. Surprise, surprise. But, you know, it's not totally faded or a total slouch or anything like that. Okay. Cheers. Yeah, really dominated by woody notes. Maybe a little bit of that menthol. I still wouldn't say this has Zhangshang or the camphor at all yet. Yeah, I feel like I'm drinking this Dingji a little too fast. It's a little bit of a downer feeling overall. I don't know. People that are more zen or contemplative than me might say this is like a meditation tea. For me, that's not totally my thing, so I don't know. But it is a tea that does kind of slow you down. Slow you down and heat you up. At this point, the taste and stuff is fairly standard. I'm trying to... this has always been a bit of a polarizing tea, and I think there's a collection of people that find it to have faded. And in some ways, I do get what they're saying. On the other hand, I think the aspects that made this tea very unique have not faded very much, like the overall just strength and body feeling. And I do detect aftertaste. There's like some proper wood and resin. It's not like it's flavorless or anything like that. So in the end, maybe I'm a bit of a moderate on this tea. I don't find that it's dead or anything like that. I just find that it has very imbalanced aspects to it, some of which can be appealing in the right context. Anyways, let's get over to this BYH. In many ways, this Dingji is a little bit more interesting to analyze just because it's such an unusual tea. Cheers. Rich plum. Yeah, it's so consistent. And just steep in, steep out. It's very much kind of the same in, same out. Steep it a little too long. It's a little tartar, but even still, it feels nice. Has great sweetness in the mouth. Has a nice aftertaste. And just feels good and definitely kind of more of an uplifting feel. It's surprising how much I can feel kind of the impact just going from one to the other, because I do 2 steeps on one and then 2 steeps on the next. I think my plan for the rest of the day is I will definitely not be having any more teas, but I'll probably drink this BYH and then I'll see how much I want to have of this Dingji Yesheng. I'll probably do a couple more, just because depending on how I feel for the rest of the day. So yeah, thank you all for tuning in. Let me know how you like this episode. Let me know how you like this tea. If you agree or disagree, let me know if I should try to do this comparison one after the other, just to see how they line up that way. And I will see you all next time. Cheers.